Jake wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag as he looked up at the gleaming starship in front of him. It was an Earlian model cruiser, all smooth lines and gentle curves, made for comfort and diplomacy rather than speed or maneuverability, which made it the perfect blank canvas for Jake's latest project. He'd been working as a mechanic at the Intergalactic Space Station for the past 5 years, ever since he left Earth with stars in his eyes and a knack for machines that exceeded even the multi-limbed Durians. Fixing hyperdrives and tuning up clunky old freight ships had been fun at first, but lately Jake found himself getting bored. There was no challenge anymore. That is, until a few days ago when the Earlian ambassador had brought his personal shuttle in with a systems malfunction. One look at the vehicle's open engine and Jake knew it was perfect. The ambassador was a gentle soul, small and unassuming, who preferred talk over confrontation. His shuttle matched lots of wasted space, minimal power allocation, and basic components that wouldn't disturb his passengers. But Jake saw potential. He approached his supervisor, an old Brazian named Bog. "How about we have some fun with this Earlian shuttle?" he asked with a gleam of mischief in his eyes. "Nothing dangerous," he added hastily at Bog's wary look. "Just souping up some systems. Make it really fly, you know." Bog gave a shrug with his upper 2 arms. "Do what you want. Just don't cause any diplomatic incidents." That was all the permission Jake needed. He fabricated some new parts with the shop's synthesizers, rerouted power from unused systems, stripped out all non-essential material to reduce weight. He was practically giggling with anticipation, wondering how the mild-mannered ambassador would react when his sedate shuttle could now outrun a fighter cruiser. When Jake was done, the shuttle looked nearly identical on the outside, but hidden under its greenish hull, it was now a true speed demon, capable of double, no triple its original maximum velocity. The ambassador returned the next day, 4 spindly legs peeking out of his loose tan robe. He bowed his bulbous head towards Jake. "Many thanks for your assistance. You have been most helpful." Jake grinned. "No problem. I gave it a little upgrade too. Should run real nice for you now." The ambassador blinked his large, dark eyes. "How very kind of you." He turned and climbed aboard his shuttle. Jake watched eagerly as the shuttle lifted off the landing pad. Just wait until it hit open space. He rubbed his hands together in anticipation. Suddenly Bog was at his side, upper arms waving. "Jake, what did you do?" His voice held notes of panic. "Nothing, just some tweaks and tuning. That's all. That shuttle just took off at 400 kels. Maximum safe speed is 80. Jake laughed. "Yeah, and she a beaut." Bog turned even paler purple. "You boosted an Earlian shuttle to 5 times its rated speed. Annihilation, save us." He barked orders to the control tower to contact the shuttle while Jake stared open-mouthed at the now empty landing pad. A minute later, the comm crackled to life. "This is Ambassador Zython. My goodness, this shuttle appears to be operating rather rapidly. Please advise. Dear me." The channel filled with the sounds of commotion and the ambassador's startled exclamations. Jake and Bog exchanged a horrified glance. Just what had he done? It took a bit of fancy flying, but between Jake's hollered instructions and the ambassador's surprising piloting skills, they managed to cut the shuttle's engines before it tore itself apart. It drifted rapidly away from the space station until Bog dispatched a tug to bring it back. Jake waited shamefacedly in Bog's office, along with a rather ruffled but cheerful ambassador. "Well, that was quite exhilarating," Ambassador Zython exclaimed. "I haven't moved that fast since I was a larva learning to swim." Bog rounded furiously on Jake. "Exhilarating. The ambassador almost died because of your recklessness. We could have had an intergalactic incident on our hands." "Truly, it is no matter," soothed Ambassador Zython. "The young mechanic made an error in judgment, but no lasting harm was done. Besides," he added conspiratorially to Jake, "that was rather fun." Bog threw all 4 arms up, but in the end merely sentenced Jake to waste extraction duty for a month. As they left, Ambassador Zython turned to Jake, a tentative smile making his eyes crinkle up. I must thank you again for your efforts, if not their ultimate results. Perhaps I could request your services again should I need any mechanical work. Properly supervised next time, of course." Jake's eyes lit up. "Seriously?" "Yeah, anytime. And Ambassador, maybe don't mention this to your superiors back home. Don't need them banning me from Earlian ships or anything." The Ambassador laughed. "Mum's the word." Over the next year, Jake and the Ambassador formed an unlikely friendship. Between diplomatic missions, Ambassador Zython would bring his ships to Jake for routine repairs and tuning. Jake was always careful to stay within safety specs, no more souping up, but he took immense pride and joy in keeping the Ambassador's small fleet humming perfectly. In return, the Ambassador would often invite Jake aboard his flagship cruiser, the Well-Wisher, when visiting dignitaries were being conveyed for negotiations. Jake would dine on exotic delicacies and listen eagerly to the Ambassador's stories of traveling the stars. When a routine maintenance trip revealed the shocking news that Jake had never been off the space station in all his years there, Ambassador Zython insisted he come along on his next voyage. "Consider it repayment," said the Ambassador gently, "for the many kind repairs you have done to my ships." And so Jake found himself aboard the Well-Wisher as an honorary crew member, grinning widely as he watched the star-blurred viewscreen from the bridge. Ambassador Zython sat serenely beside him in a vaguely throne-like chair, nodding approvingly. Their destination was a small outpost on the edge of known space, where trilateral talks were taking place regarding a disputed nebula rich in minerals. Having never been involved in interplanetary politics before, Jake mostly tried to stay out of the way during the actual negotiations. But he couldn't help noticing the tension among the various diplomats and the way some races seemed poised ready to storm out at any moment. He mentioned his observations to the Ambassador over a dinner of roasted moon beetles. This must be difficult work sometimes, getting everyone to agree. Ambassador Zython waved a slender hand. "It can be challenging, yes, but we must have faith that common ground can be found among all beings." Jake wasn't quite so optimistic. "Doesn't seem likely with this bunch. The Graxians want full mining rights, the Dreft want to make the nebula a protected site, and the Phurons could care less as long as they get a cut of the profits. Don't really see a compromise happening there." "Perhaps not," sighed the Ambassador, "but we must not lose hope. The universe itself is built on balance, and there is balance to be found here too, if the parties are willing to work together openly and honestly." Jake just grunted and speared another beetle. Sounded like naive drivel to him, but Ambassador Zython believed it with all his heart. Maybe that kind of innocence was what made him such a good ambassador. Over the next few days, negotiations proceeded in a rather circuitous manner, with a lot of blustering and table-pounding and ear-shredding screeches from the Dreft contingent, but little in the way of actual progress. Until the final evening, when Ambassador Zython invited representatives from all three factions to dine aboard the Well-Wisher. There, over Jake's excellent roasted space fowl, clouds of intoxicating drink smoke courtesy of the Phurons, and the Ambassador's gentle, coaxing conversation, astonishing headway was suddenly made. By the next morning, a preliminary agreement had been reached exactly as Ambassador Zython predicted. The nebula would be open to all for mining with strict oversight to protect ecosystems. The Dreft received exclusive research rights as keepers of the nebula ecology, and the Phurons would funnel profits back into much-needed infrastructure improvements across the sector. As they bid the delegates farewell amidst a chorus of screeches, warbles, and guttural humming noises that passed for applause across species, Jake found himself staring open-mouthed once again. Somehow the impossible had happened. Balance achieved, conflict diminished. He turned to Ambassador Zython with newfound awe. "How did you get them to agree? I thought we'd be here for months." The Ambassador smiled modestly. "As I said, my friend, have faith. Where there is communication and goodwill, resolution can always be found." Still skeptical but impressed nonetheless, Jake couldn't argue with success. As the Well-Wisher slipped gracefully back into the starry blackness of space, he gazed out the viewport feeling like his mental horizons had expanded along with the physical ones. Diplomacy wasn't just idealistic notions. Sometimes it worked. He wandered down to engineering to tweak their drive alignment, mind churning over the events of the last few days. unlikely friendships, intractable conflicts, and finding balance between them. Suddenly Jake smiled. Maybe there was a metaphor there for his relationship with the ambassador. Jake, the restless drifter, wandering from job to job, and Ambassador Zython, so rooted in connections and responsibilities. Surely they had little common ground, and yet their friendship had led to growth and joy for both. Like the nebula resolution, they'd found an equilibrium that gave more than it took. With a lightness in his chest that had nothing to do with low gravity, Jake fine-tuned the well-wisher's drives. Spinning stars surrounded him in a dazzling display of infinite possibilities. Who knew what the future might hold? But he was ready to soar through it all with his eyes and heart wide open.